Hey there, it's Michelle Caruana from Play Cafe Academy and Profitable Play. And I am so excited to bring you this guest expert interview today, not just because I'm interviewing Sydney Loper, who is an OG Play Cafe Academy and Playmaker Society member. I helped Sydney open her Play Cafe doors way back in 2019. You may have remembered seeing her testimonial or me sharing her story years and years ago on this channel. But I'm also excited because today, Sydney and I are talking about a topic that is very hot right now, both for families who have school-age children, but also in the education and play industries. And that is the concept of micro schooling. Now, I'm going to take a quick second and read from my notes here because I don't want to mess this up. But by definition, a micro school is a small independent learning community that typically serves a limited number of students. These schools are characterized by personalized, student-centered education that is often tailored to the needs, interests, and pace of the individual students. But with anything, I found that in practice, every micro school is very unique and operates a little bit differently. A while ago, I interviewed another Play Cafe Academy and Playmaker Society member, Alara Owens, the owner of Project Play. And in that conversation, I'm going to link it in the video description, don't worry. We talked about her micro school and how she added that to her existing indoor playground business. And it was definitely part of her plans from the beginning, but she talks in that conversation again how she integrated all of her different offers together. But today, Sydney and I are going to talk about her 100% business model shift from a play cafe to a micro school. Now, she's been doing this for the past 3 years because, again, this business model change took place during the pandemic. And she's going to really pull back the curtain and share everything about the transition. So she's going to talk about how she got started with the whole concept of a micro school and how that is different from how she operates today. She's going to talk about what her school looks like in terms of number of students, number of teachers, what her physical space looks like, and what had to change, and all of the costs involved with that. She's going to talk about her personal life and how her day-to-day and how her family's relationship with the business has changed from her transition as a play cafe owner to a micro school owner. She's going to talk about some mistakes she made along the way and things that she would do differently. And she is also going to just share tons and tons of advice for anyone who is feeling a little micro school curious or is just feeling similarly called to this type of business. I have linked all of Sydney's information, her social media channels, and her school website in the video description if you want to follow along with Sydney's journey or just cheer her along. And if you have any questions for either myself or Sydney, please ask them in the comments. I'm sure Sydney will be happy to answer. She is still a member of our Playmaker Society, and we are just so lucky to have her. And I feel so grateful that she took the time and energy to do this interview with me today, even though she is technically no longer a Play Cafe owner. And again, she has transitioned to this new exciting business model. All right, without further ado, here is my conversation with Cultivate Academy owner, Sydney Loper. Hi, Sydney. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here.
All right, so before we get into today's topic, do you want to introduce yourself to everyone and tell us a little bit about yourself and your business?
Yes. Okay. So my name's Sydney Loper, and I'm from Mobile, Alabama. I am a former Play Cafe owner from the Playmaker Society with Michelle, and I opened that in 2019, I think. And I'm currently now transitioned into a micro school owner. After the pandemic kind of took a whirlwind to all of us as Play Cafe owners, we kind of stopped and regrouped and went a different direction. I have three kiddos of my own. I was a traditional school educator for about 10 years in the midst of Play Cafe and before, and our family has kind of made this new transition work really well for us.
Awesome. So, what is your business called?
So, our micro school is called Cultivate Studios. We actually started in a network of micro schools called Acton Academy, which might be familiar to some people depending on where you're located. It's a little more popular in the north, but it's a network of micro schools, and that's how we got our start. But we've kind of transitioned into our own way of doing things, and so we renamed ourselves Cultivate Studios.
So, does that mean you are like an independent micro school?
Yes. Yes. So we kind of took what we learned from the network, but then also wanted to do things a little bit different. So we started our own thing.
Awesome. And can you tell me a little bit about what a micro school is? Because that might actually be a new term for people.
Yes. So the term micro school is new, especially like for us down here in the South, where people are very, I would say, stuck in more traditional Southern ways. It's nice to now have a term that's popping around that can kind of designate what we are, because most of the time it is hard to explain what we do. A lot of people think about a micro school as kind of a blend of private school, homeschool, unschool. It's kind of just a new way of doing what you traditionally would think of school as, but there's so many different ways people are doing it. So micro school is a very broad term that just kind of encompasses what we call edupreneurs instead of entrepreneurs, that are kind of trying to reinvent what education can look like. And it takes on many, many different forms, but that's kind of a new term that's popping around where people can kind of more understand what it might be like.
Yeah, so let's talk about what it looks like for you guys. So, can you tell me a little bit about your school in terms of what ages of kiddos you have, how many classes you have, how many teachers you have, just out of curiosity, just so people have some context?
Yes. So for us at our micro school right now, we're serving ages 4 to 12. And a lot of the terms are a little bit different. So for someone who's never heard of a micro school or this type of world, I try not to use as many of our terms just so they can kind of be understanding of what we are. But we have studios instead of classrooms. And so we don't group children by grade level. We group them in mixed age studios. So we have a 4 to 6 studio called Wonder. We have a 6 to 8 studio called Explorer, and then we have a 9 to 12 studio called Discovery. So we have three different groups of mixed ages. And to be um it's kind of like the youngest studio is learning to read. The middle studio is early readers. And then obviously the older friends are using reading to learn instead of learning to read. So it's kind of grouped differently just because as parents, we all know how extremely different our own children, whether it's one, two, three, or more, are. So it's hard to take a classroom full of even more extremely different children and make them do all the exact same thing. So here we're not grouped by grade levels or academic abilities. We're just grouped by kind of 3 or 4 years of age ranges where they can grow where they are.
Awesome. And do you have one teacher per classroom or more?
So another term we say that we don't have teachers, we have guides or kind of like coaches is a better term, because they're not standing at the front instructing on a pre-designed set of curriculum or lessons. They're guiding each child where they are. So we have one guide per studio, and then as the director, I kind of float around and help them. And then we also this year have a program coordinator who she's also able to float around and help where needed.
That's great. And what inspired you to kind of transition other than COVID from a play cafe to a micro school? Because a lot of people transition away from the play cafe model for whatever reason. But what drew you to this model specifically?
So I definitely could not have done this without having done Play Cafe first for multiple reasons. But Play Cafe was our family's first venture into a business of any kind. And it was the way we had ours set up was a lot of the dramatic play, play based, experiences or camps or drop ins or things like that, where we really focused on those types of things instead of like a jumpy house or something like that. It was all dramatic play, things where they can really use their imagination and have fun with it. So, having done that, and then having also been a teacher, I kind of ran with that idea, but I actually found it because I always tell people it's just Facebook being creepy. I typed in on Google different methods of education or non traditional education. And the very next day, I started getting ads on Facebook, pop ups of like, um, schooling, different networks out there, what a micro school was. None of this had I ever heard before. But then because of one Google search, it was everywhere. And I'm like, ooh, what is this? What is this? And it kind of just opened our eyes to a new way. And like I said, Acton, the network, is how we got started. And so I got into their email campaign, and it was like, why wait? Open one where you are. And I was like, ooh, yay, I don't have to move to get my kids to attend something like this. And one of the qualifications for that network was to have had a business before or have business experience. So had I not done Play Cafe, I wouldn't have even been considered as someone that could open one of their network schools. Um, so kind of just the play based mindset and atmosphere, especially with younger learners, younger friends, like that was exactly what we wanted to pivot into, as more, obviously of a, and I don't even say, sometimes I don't even say school. That's why we call it studios or a campus, just trying to modernize what it is that we're doing so parents can kind of look at it a different way.
Absolutely. And it sounds like there was obviously demand in your family for a different type of education. But before you kind of went down this path, because micro schooling and that term is so new, how did you decide that there was going to actually be demand in your area before you opened? And did you find that there was demand, or did you really have to educate people about what this type of education even is?
Right. So, yes, we're definitely constantly having to explain what it is. But I also think that might be a little more based on our location. Um, and I keep throwing Acton out there, but just for instance, like when I started with Acton, we had a founders group that year, and other parts of the country, people were coming to that school because of the name and they knew what it was. Whereas here, that name meant nothing to anybody, and it didn't help me in terms of people knowing what we were doing. So, just for name's sake, it didn't matter if we were called that or not because people didn't know about it. So we are constantly still having to try to explain what we do and how it's different. But this is our third year. So it's every year it's becoming a little less of explaining and a little more ability to show from the past 2 years what we've learned and how it works, and kind of people can see a visual and hear from other families, as opposed to in the beginning when I was shocked that anybody was like, yeah, let's sign up. I'm like, what? So I, just me being me, if any of my Play Cafe friends know, I was just like, let's just do it. Like I don't have a lot of sit back and like think of all the things, and I'm just like, let's go for it, because I even in my head I said to myself, okay, if it's just me and my three kids doing this, fine. Like we need somewhere out of the house to learn and grow together. We want to have friends around because they don't, if it's just them and mom, like the homeschool thing for our family would never have worked. And I just knew they needed to be surrounded by other kids and activities and all kinds of ways to learn and grow. So that was where I started. And then thankfully we were blessed to have a community to begin with that were willing to jump on board. And I told those parents at the beginning, I'm like, this is an experiment. This is new. Like, come along this journey, adventure with us. These are our goals. This is our purpose. This is our why. Like, we'd love for you to be a part of it. So the people, which we call our founding families, like they knew that I didn't already know everything there was to know about this because we were brand new. Um, but I think at the beginning, being part of a network or having other resources helped, as not just, oh, here's some random person doing some random thing. But we started that year with 7 learners. At the end of the year, we had 17. And then our next year, we started in the 20s. And then this year, we have 30. So it's definitely a learning progress, a learning process, but it's really one of those things which other people told you, like you just have to wait for word of mouth. And that's hard in the beginning when you're just pushing, but it does come. So you have those people who are there for year 2, year 3, and they're sharing about you and they have experience. And story is how you market. So like all these people can now have their story to tell, which is what draws other people in.
And is there anything that you do as a business owner to specifically like facilitate your current families? I don't want to say advertising to get new families, but kind of getting you referrals and bringing new families into the space. Is there anything you do to encourage that, or is it just all organic?
So I would say it's mostly organic. I do use any type of feedback that they give me. Like we do, I would say it's about quarterly surveys to the parents to get feedback on all things. And anything they type in there that's some sort of review or anything like that, I'll always say, hey, do you mind if I share that? So then I'll take it and put it on the website, or I'll take it and make a graphic. And actually, and I've known this and you know this, and I don't ever remember. It's like as much as I like to post on social and push, 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 I was recently reminded, okay, the stories are what matter most. Like people want to resonate. So I reached out to our founding families first to say, like, hey, would you mind sending me your why? Like, I'd love to highlight different families' reasoning for choosing Cultivate. And so I've kind of started what's called a My Why series, where I'm kind of waiting not to put it all out there at once, even though I love putting everything out there. To like every week or so, like have a different family's photo and like them share their personal words on like the why that they chose this for their family.
That's a great idea. I might have to steal that from you. That's an
Yeah.
amazing idea. And I bet it really helps to educate people in your community as well about what type of family is a good fit for this program. And it probably allows people to see themselves in other people's stories.
Right, right.
So I know we talked a little bit about educating people about micro schooling and things like that. And the My Why series is probably going to, like I said, help a lot with that. Is there any other method that you found super effective in terms of educating people about what you are or what you do? Is it videos? Is it just meeting with people one on one? How do you kind of get the word out in your community that there is an alternative to the traditional education system?
Yes. So that is definitely somewhere I could improve in terms of networking and being out there. Granted, this is the first year I've had any like help. And so now that she's there, my coordinator, and it's basically an assistant director, but I told her, like, nobody wants to be an assistant. You're the program coordinator. But now having her help, like, is going to give me the opportunity to get out and go to networking things and all of that. But I would say the three main things that I do to try to educate people would be number one is we have an info kit. And I don't remember where we got that verbiage, but on our website, on the admissions page, anybody can go and download the what we call free info kit. And again, that's just a term to make people think they're getting something great. But it's an 8-page info kit. And so they have to plug in their email and then click submit. So that way I have their email to use for whatever else, people who were interested enough to click it. But then it's 8 pages of kind of an explanation, and anybody on this call can go download it just out of curiosity. But then the second thing was we found a really good videographer last year to come in and tell our story. So those types of things are expensive, and we ended up just being able to work out a deal with someone who was passionate and excited about what we were doing, which made it even better to work with them. But they made a really great video, and I told them, I was like, I don't want to be in it at all. Like, I want it to be from the student's point of view. Like, I want them telling what it is, how it works, everything. And so he even had like an idea to go pull some little kids that he knows that don't even attend our studios, and for them to start the video as like, oh, I'm so sad I have to do all this homework and study for all these tests. I wish I didn't have to. And then some kids like, have you heard of Cultivate? And then it like goes into our school. So I have that now posted like on the front page of our website, at the top of our Facebook pin post. Like, so anyone who's interested, they can get a visual like in the beginning of their research. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is I have on my website the Calendly booking service, which is free. Because I've found that if you say, oh, email so and so for a tour, like that extra step of them going out of their way to email is like, some people are just not going to do it. But if you're on the website, oh, click here to book, like they're more likely to do that. And so I have little 30-minute tours during the mornings of school that people can go on and book, or they can come in, get a visual themselves, and then that's where I sit down and chat with them about it. So those are kind of the three ways that I try to spread the story. But again, for me, that's just people who are already looking. I would like to do more of like getting out and about and trying to spread what we are.
Well, those are three, I mean, amazing methods. And it sounds like that video is going to be really powerful in getting the word out to people who may not even be considering micro school because, marketing 101, you
Yeah.
kind of hit the pain points first.
Mhm.
Draw people in with the homework and the tests, things that are probably already big issues in their lives. And then you kind of give them the solution. So it
Mhm.
sounds like you're going to be able to leverage that to, again, raise awareness. So I'm so glad that you invested in them. That's great. But to kind of take a step back, because we're getting, into the marketing and things like that. But for anyone who's listening who is maybe planning on opening a play cafe but isn't sure about the right model, or there's a lot of people who are currently looking to possibly transition from a traditional play cafe pay to play model to more of a micro school, or even just adding a micro school as part of their offers if they have a bigger space. So to take a step back and talk a little bit about the transition, was there anything that was particularly difficult about your transition, or can you talk a little bit about what that was like?
So when you were saying that, my first thought was when I had the play cafe and you're hustling to try to get different people in, I feel like the homeschool community has tripled, quadrupled, like all over since COVID. So, like, that's something that you could definitely pull in, even if it's like a designated day for homeschool families, because I've actually found, at least here, that's the majority of our clientele, which is not what I expected when I started. But most of the people who've signed up for what we do have some type of homeschooling background, or were choosing to homeschool, or they're kind of already in that mindset of they want something different. So if you have the space to be able to bring in homeschool families, that could be like a way that you at least kickstart something different. And I would say even do like, some type of educational, like hands-on play-based, project-based activity slash play or whatever it is. So that can kind of draw in maybe new people in homeschool groups and communities that they might already have. Um, but for us, we have a different space than we did for Play Cafe, and that was more directed towards, like, I knew I needed an outdoor area, like, that was, like, a big concern for me, which I know a lot of the play cafes on here do already have such a great area, and when I had my play cafe, that's something I wished I had, was outdoor space, but I knew we had to have somewhere with outdoor space, and personally, for me, I wanted to be closer to our home, so with my play cafe, I tried to pick, like, an area that was a little more foot trafficky and, like, all of that, but it's, like, 30-35 minutes from where I live. So those were the two main reasons that we wanted to transition to a different space to be able to start that.
And just out of curiosity, were you able to open up in a less expensive area in terms of rent because you didn't have to worry about that foot traffic? Or is it kind of similar?
It was honestly almost the same price. Um, so the first area we picked was a little more like upscale, like nicer area of town. But like I said, I felt like it was the only area where we lived that people were actually walking around, because Mobile is just very spread out. But this one we picked because it was closer to where we live. It was bigger and it had that outdoor space and it was new. So I was, so kind of the price ended up being about the same.
Awesome, but probably less in terms of price per square foot,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
cheaper
Hmm.
in, or excuse me, similar price in total. But if you were
Right.
to do like a apples to apples comparison, it probably ends up
Hmm.
being cheaper
Yeah.
for what it is. So that's really interesting because that's something that I didn't think about before this conversation, that you were probably able to have it opened up a little bit more in terms of location because you don't have to worry about being super, super close to those retail areas and things like that. So, one thing I wanted to ask about, and one thing that you kind of alluded to, is the hustling when you're in a play cafe and having to get new people in every single day. Can you talk a little bit about how different it is for you as an owner to have that more reliable recurring revenue as opposed to having to, make sure people get in the door every single day?
Yes, yes. That was when I saw your questions. That was one of the main things that is a little more less stressful because, as Play Cafe, you're just hoping, people sign up for your membership. Or on a Saturday, you might have one person, you might have 20 people. Like it's just so you never know. So for this, having our competing monthly membership come in. And we did actually call it membership because we didn't want to be kind of like the normal institution tuition. We kind of changed our verbiage to be membership to make them feel like they're more a part of something. But it's the monthly membership 12 months of the year, regardless of school days or holidays or anything like that. So you know that if you can plug in everything and take this tuition membership, like everything's going to be covered. And I will say to anybody who's considering it, look at the regular schools in your area and like be either exactly the same or even a little bit more, because that's something that I didn't listen to at the beginning and I had to raise each year. And I wish that that wasn't the case. I mean, like last year I had to raise it significantly. And that's not something that I wanted to throw at our families, but in order to cover everything and like be okay, like I had to do it. So I wish I'd would have already started there, because then also people are like, you're getting what you're paying for. So you like at the beginning I was scared. I was like, I just want anybody to sign up. Like I didn't want to charge a ton. But like in order to cover all the things you're gonna have to cover, like it does need to be a little bit more.
And can you talk to me a little bit about one thing I didn't ask when I was talking about your school setup? Is it full time, like 5 days a week, all day, or is it staggered, or is it part time school? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So we've changed that every year. And I always say to my parents, I'm like, bear with me, like we're figuring it out, like we're gonna get in the flow. But our first year we were 8:30 to 3:30, 5 days a week. And then I thought to myself, okay, like what do we want for our family and our kids? Like what makes sense? The hustle and the bustle is a lot. Like, and that's one of kind of the mindsets of a micro school is doing things differently. I'm like, why don't we have a day off, a 4 day school, which is kind of a thing that's happening anyway, 4 day school week. Um, but and so I know a lot of other schools or micro schools that are actually off on Fridays. We ended up choosing to be off on Wednesdays, and it's been such a dream because it's kind of like you go 2 days, teachers, kids, everybody gets a break, and then they're so refreshed and ready for Thursday, Friday. Um, and Wednesdays we kind of use sometimes for like a family outing or a field trip or anything like that that's optional that they can attend. So our model is the 4 day school week. But because homeschool families were a big part of our network, we had to consider what they wanted to, because we didn't want to just lose them and say this is your only option. So last year we had either a 2 day or a 4 day. And then this year we have actually only a 3 day or a 4 day. So we did go back to 3 or 4 because all of our homeschool friends would attend Tuesday, Thursday, and Fridays were Friday fun day. So all the hard work that they would do, they would kind of miss out on, or they would like want to be there on Friday. So now we have either the 3 day or the 4 day. So our friends who do come that extra day, they just get more of that like smaller group, one on one teacher coach interaction and like working on their core skills. So that's what we've transitioned to. But then you
Got
can do
it.
them anyway. Like there's micro schools that are like only half day or 2 days a week or 3 days a week, or some of them do all day every day. Like that is optional to the owner.
Yeah, and you mentioned, how many more families are homeschooling now. I know there's a lot of factors that played into that. There's tons of things that we won't even get into, but one of the things obviously was COVID. A lot of people started homeschooling during that time and then just kept going. And something else that obviously happened in conjunction with that was a lot more people are working from home now. So I'm sure a lot more people are able to have a 4 day school week and they're able to have these more flexible schedules. Have you seen that kind of play into um, how people are able to do these new non-traditional education models? Do a lot of your families work from home or are self-employed?
Yes, yes to both. So the first year when we transitioned to 5 to 4, we actually only lost one learner. But then in Thanksgiving of that year, she returned, and they're like, "We'll just figure Wednesdays out," because they wanted her to be part of this type of thing. So it is a balance. I mean, I've definitely had families tour who would have been the perfect fit in terms of the family beliefs and the learners, like everything. And I was like, "Oh, they're so great," but like they're like, "We can't do Wednesdays. Like we both work. Like we don't have another option." Um, so it's just something that you have to take into consideration of what you and your family want at the beginning, because changing it like I have is not ideal. So like really process and think through like what's going to work best for you and your family, and then kind of go from there, because people will come and go out of a school, out of a play cafe, out of anything. So it's like you don't really want to base what you're doing on all of their thoughts and opinions. You want to kind of start it, and then whoever comes, comes, you know?
Yes, and I want to get into a little bit more of your role as the owner, but real quickly, just to clarify, do you also do a traditional school year or is it all year round?
No. Okay. So we operate on an 11-month trimester. So we actually, so down here, most schools start like the beginning of August. So I know it's different around, but
Yes.
so for us, it's later when we start. We start at the end of August, and then we actually go all the way through the end of June. But we have more breaks throughout. So our only month really off is July, where kids aren't going at all. But my kids are like begging me, like, when does school go back? When does school go back? Which is so funny because when we grew up, we're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to ever go back to school again. But that's kind of our pain point is like kids want to be there, like they're excited to learn, and so that's kind of what we base our micro school on. But it's a little more spaced out, a little more breaks throughout, so they can also kind of retain the things they've worked on and not have such a lengthy, long break not being there.
That's great. And again, getting back into your role as the owner, I know you mentioned that you do a lot of tours, you kind of float between the classrooms and help out. Can you just describe a little bit about what your day to day as an owner is? Because again, I know a lot of people who are listening are play cafe owners and they're kind of looking to see, okay, what's different about owning something like this? So, can you explain a little bit about, I guess, what your typical day or week would look like as the owner now?
Yes. So, at the beginning, it was just me. I actually had another teacher who I knew. She was a traditional school teacher. She was all into like the different way of things. And she broke her leg, not at school, but she broke her leg
Oh,
2 weeks after we started. And she couldn't come. She was like in a wheelchair, all this stuff for like 2 or 3 months. And so I actually started our first year and I was just doing everything, the teacher, the director, all by myself. So that was an interesting year. But I ended up hiring somebody around like Thanksgiving of that year, and she was super helpful. And then the second year, I hired two teacher guides to kind of be in their own studios, but neither one of them had any type of teacher background. And so, just like all the little things that I knew about like setting up and planning and everything, I kind of had to do for both of them. So last year was really hard. And then I ended up being able to add a couple more helpers, like I would call them studio motivators or people like that to just come in and get to know and be an extra pair of hands. Um, so we ended the year with actually four guides last year, and now they've transitioned to this year. So this year has been like a dream to start with because I don't have any new faces and everybody knows what they're doing. So a lot of other micro school owners that I've talked to have been like, if you can make it to year 2 or 3, like you're gonna make it. But the first 2 years are definitely still a hustle and a struggle. And you don't have to be the teacher or the guide if you don't feel like you have the background for that or the desire to do that. A lot of micro school owners hire like from the get-go and don't try to do any of that themselves. They're still the director behind the scenes. But for me as the director, um I feel like I'm still kind of like the face of it. So in the mornings, like I'm always like greeting everybody with music and smiles and helping them out of their cars and getting them where they need to be. Once everybody's kind of in their spot, I'm on the computer. I'm working on, like parent contact or little monthly newsletters or, tuition and all of those things behind the scenes, marketing. And then, like I said, now trying to do more networking where I'm getting out there. And I know this, which I'm about to touch on, was another question I think that you had. We are a nonprofit, so grants is something I'm trying to spend more time on now. Just spending time trying to get out there and apply for different things because there is so much available. You just have to have the time to do it. And then I do float around. I try to connect with the learners one on one or something they're working on, like just check in with them, take parents, send pictures to parents. Just all the fun behind the scenes things. And then I'm not actually there every day. So like I'm trying to get it now to where like my program coordinator, we can kind of work together, but then also have kind of different schedules. So there's always an extra pair of eyes and hands, but not necessarily always both of us. But I couldn't have really done that until this year.
And what would you describe as, I guess, the most rewarding part of owning your business now?
The relationships that you form because these kids and these families are here every single day. It's not like, oh, they may be come play for one day, or even if they have a membership, you might see them once a week or whatever. It's like I'm with these kids all day, every day, and with these talking to these parents all day, every day. We do a lot of community events or nights. Like we have a mom paint night party coming up next week, where I just try to make more community and fellowship. So just all the new like relationships for me and for my personal kids that have formed out of this school have been very, treasured to me. And then just seeing how excited they get about the little things because, like, having been a traditional teacher, like, especially with the older grades when I taught third or fifth, like, it was a lot of defeat all the time for a lot of the learners, and a lot of, and dragging their feet and just aggravated about anything they were learning or having to do. Whereas here, you kind of take all of those parameters off because we actually don't have grades or report cards or tests. So it's all about like excitement to learn. And that's really exciting to see that they're just eager to be there and to learn new things without the, weight of comparison to other people or where someone else thinks that they should be.
That's great. And I know your kids are still young, especially your youngest, but do they like helping out and do they enjoy having this as part of your family dynamic?
Yes. And it's so funny because when we had Play Cafe, it was like I wanted a play cafe, like, to attend and go to, but then once I was in it with my own kids, they basically thought of it as their second home because that's where we always were, and they were younger at that age, and they would just, like, destroy everything, and I was like, "You're not coming to play cafe." I was like, "Yeah, I can't."
Same.
But
Very
he
relatable.
yeah. And so, like, here, it's the same thing, I'm like, we're up there all the time fixing this, doing that, like, it's their second home, but it's also where all of their friends all of their buddies, and, like, it's been a lot better now that, like, I'm removed because, like I said, in the first year, we had 1 studio of mixed ages, both of my oldest in there and me as teacher. I'm very glad we're past that. But now it's so much better because it's like mom is not being teacher. Behind the scenes, they get to have another adult like pouring into them and believing in them. And then and it's somewhere that they want to be. So and like I did it for them. I mean, obviously, I made the school for them. And so, it's nice to see. And then my youngest, she's not there yet. She's only 3. She'll be 4 in December, and we're 4 and up. But she gets like even this morning, I got a text from her teachers, like she had such a hard time going to school because she wants to go to mommy's school. And I'm like, not yet, because we're just up there all the time. So yeah.
That's awesome. And do they help like behind the scenes and stuff too?
Yes, yes. And my oldest, which if you have more than one, the oldest likes to be in charge anyway. So he thinks he knows all things and he could probably lead his studio himself if he wanted to.
That is so funny. A couple logistics things that I wanted to kind of ask about because I know people are going to get curious. I know I would get follow-up questions if I didn't ask. So because I know a lot of micro school owners, I've interviewed a couple. A lot of them will collect tuition upfront. Do you struggle a lot with like the month to month payments? Do you have to spend a lot of time chasing people down, or do you use any tools or anything that kind of helps with that? I'm just
Oh my
curious.
goodness. Yes. This is the first year where I've said no cash, no check, only through our system, which we use. It's called ProCare. And it's actually what I use for my younger daughter's little preschool too. It's so easy. It's an app. And that's the only way parents can pay. And we can even go on there and like add like your t-shirt order, or if you ordered this, or you're participating in mom's paint night, they can all be added to your ProCare account. Because last year, oh my goodness, the number of kids who'd be like, "Oh, here's my tuition," or someone's handing it into me in the carpool, and I'm like, "No, no, no, I don't even know where I'm going to put that. I don't know if I'm going to find it again." Like it stressed me out so bad. People paying all different ways and forms and passions. Um, and yeah, there would be a few families where I'm like, "Tomorrow's the last day to pay this month." Like, please, like, and just chasing that. So now with this system, it's a lot easier because it automatically charges them a late fee on the 5th day. Like That's the only way you can pay. It shows me if you've paid or if it's processing. Like, it's just so much easier to keep up with all of that on there. But that was a lesson learned.
Good to know. Good to know. Because as soon as you said that, I was like, I wonder if that's an issue. So I'm so glad that you found a tool that works for you. And then the next thing that I kind of wrote down to ask about is your nonprofit status. So what made you decide to go for a nonprofit model instead of a for-profit model?
Really, the main thing was the opportunity for grants. Um, and I actually don't know that much about all of the differences and everything, to be honest. I just know that when we were starting, you could choose within that first network we started if you wanted to be profit or not profit. But I went with that just because there's a few organizations that I've worked with, even like through Play Cafe, like a lady who has a cooking whole thing. It's called the Cookery. Like she's nonprofit. She gets all kinds of donations, and just I feel like it opens you up for more opportunity, and people with their tax write-offs. And like I said, that is not my area of expertise. I don't even know what that means, but people like that they can write it as a write off. And so we have different ways that we collect donations, whether it's for fundraising or things like that around town. And then also we have been awarded a few grants, and like I said, that's something I want to focus more on now that I have someone helping me, is spending the time to apply for more. Because if you have the time, it can benefit your program so much. Like 3,000, 5,000, 10,000. Like there's all kind of grants out there, especially in this particular movement, this new way of education. There's a lot of people out there waiting and willing and wanting to fund the movement of education changing.
That's really interesting. So one other question that I had is, you know, a lot of people listening are probably, you know, wanting to maybe transition to a different business model. A lot of people have been open for several years. Maybe they have multiple locations and they're just kind of looking for something different or something more reliable. Again, whatever the case may be. Um, what advice would you have for anyone who might be considering a business model change?
To this in particular or anything?
We'll do to this in particular.
What advice would I have? Well, I think if you have a current Play Cafe going and you already have like a steady set of families and customers, like honestly, when I first started this, the way that I set it up, like the visual aspect, kind of similar to the Play Cafe. And I had a handful of people call and say, could they have their birthday parties there? And I was like, we're a school. But like that's like what people were thinking just in terms of the way they see it. So it's like if you already have a set of people who are part of what you're doing, like I would reach out to them and I would be like, hey, would you be interested in this form, or what form or fashion of, bringing your, whether it's a toddler or like older. I think for most people, if it's like it's 4 hours or less, there's a lot of things you don't have to do if someone's dropping off their child. But I mean, just I would just reach out first and see, since you already have people. So for us, it was a little different because we moved to a different part of town. So those people that were going to the Play Cafe aren't the people who live like out where we live. But I did also see the people at the Play Cafe, like they weren't just coming from there, and the people at our micro school are not just coming from right beside us. It has to be something that they want. But to go ahead and be plugging it to those around you, and then find a resource. Like I said, there's lots of networks out there. I'm happy to chat with people about, what it takes and all the behind the scenes, and be helpful just like you were to me. I mean, like all of us know we couldn't have done Play Cafe without Michelle. So I mean, like that was like the biggest resource ever. And honestly, seriously, I've been in a lot of different groups for a lot of different things. And these are still my favorite people, even though I've never met y'all. I was so sad I wasn't able to come to the New York thing. But
Next year, next year.
yes, like
I
this
think
group
we're
of
going to the
people.
South next year.
Yeah, come on. This group of people, I mean, it's just something, I don't know if it's because we're all moms or we all were like passionate about the same things. But find a community or a network of like-minded people that can like be there for you or support you, or, help you transition to something different. There's a lot happening. So I don't know, people are all over, but definitely research it and get plugged in because this movement is happening fast. And there's so many ways. Like I said, you can start your own thing. It depends on, how you feel about it. But then there's also like a ton of networks already there, different types of micro schools that you could plug into if you wanted. But I would definitely say to reach out to the community and then find your own new community to, support you.
Yeah, and I'm going to link your community in the show notes or in the video description, depending on if you're watching or listening. But do you want to tell us a little bit about what you have going on in your community?
Yes. Okay. So I just started this because, like I said, Mobile is very spread out, and there's people who live in different parts of town, or even what we call across the bay, and they say like, "Oh, I wish you had one over here. I wish you had one over here." Like my kid would go, and I'm like, same thing as you. Like you learn so much having your play cafe that like you could tell us so many things that we could never know. And so for me, like for doing this for 3 years, like I feel like I've learned so much and I've been able to grow and change and accommodate and fix and alter all the things that didn't go right at the beginning. And I would just be happy to help anybody else do that because I am really passionate about education being different and children having the opportunity to have a true childhood and take away a lot of the things that I didn't love when I was in the traditional classroom. But so I've, copied Michelle, her Playmaker Society. So I'm giving ode to that to Micro School Maker Society, which doesn't roll off the tongue as easily. But we're on Facebook and Instagram, and I've kind of just started plugging like little videos or little clips to kind of inspire people or let them know that I'm there to help. I haven't done a lot of the resources or videos or things like that that people can download, like that are currently in the Play Cafe one. But I'm just putting myself out there, open for discussion to help anybody who might want to have this as their next goal.
That's awesome. And for anyone listening to this specifically, again, some people might be in the beginning process. And something that I found is that, I love the Play Cafe model. It worked for me. But a lot of people that get attracted to this type of business model are former educators, and they don't realize that when you're operating a retail business, you're not spending a lot of time educating, you're not spending a lot of time with the kids, you're really dealing with the parents and the business logistics and more like marketing, and you have to get people in every
Mhm.
day. So a lot of people operate the retail play cafe model and then they're like, well, this isn't really what I pictured. So again, they want to kind of transition a couple years down the line into a better fit for their family. So just really curious, I know you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but do you find that your experience owning the play cafe helped with your micro school?
100%. Like I said, I could not have done this without doing that first. It just owning a business in general. I mean, there's so much to it that you really don't think about when it all looks bright and fancy and shiny and you're like, "Oh yeah, I want to do that." It is a lot of sacrifice, a lot of work. I always say like me and my husband cuz he's our Mr. Fix It. And I'm like, we work 24/7 and we don't get paid or we don't get paid much. So it's definitely something that you have to want to do and like be super passionate about. And like I said, it's helped me a lot this go round. Learning that like even though I liked that part of town for Play Cafe, like being so close to home is really beneficial for us as the owners to be able to run up there and do this or run up there and do that. Or like if you need to run home, like it's so nice to be closer to your business. Um, and I forgot what else you asked me. I just had a mind blank. You want to tell me again?
I don't, I think I just asked if what you learned operating a play cafe kind of bled into what you do now as a micro school owner.
Yes, yes. So like with our Play Cafe, we did a lot of um, parties or drop offs or ticketed events because we found like that was our more money maker than even the open play. And so all of that, all of the programs I used, all of the ideas and things that everybody in your group shared, I still use a lot of that. I feel like I had a lot of what I already needed instead of trying to, buy a ton of new things. Like it's a lot of the same equipment, a lot of the same furniture, a lot of the same toys. Um, there's so many things that just went right into it, especially being play based and project based. Like a lot of that was already there, and we still do all the fun things. So like during the summer, like our month of July. Like I did like a princess camp, and I've done an under the sea camp, like all the little fun things like the Play Cafe people do. Like if I had had a Bluey, I would have done a Bluey camp. Like that's something that was past my time, but all the Bluey costumes on here, I'm like, yes. So it's yeah, definitely a easy transition based on what I already knew from that.
That's awesome. And it's so great that you're helping other people kind of realize this dream. And it sounds like it kind of comes down to what your why is for your family and why you want to open a business, what lifestyle you want, because as you kind of alluded to, they're very different. So it sounds like this is a great fit for your family. And I'm so happy to see you thriving. And like I said, now teaching other people how to do what you do.
Oh, thank you. You started it all, girl. Couldn't do it without our Michelle, that's for sure.
Well, thank you. And it's just so great to connect with you after, having been working with you since 2019 and having been behind the scenes for everything. And I really feel like those people that opened in 2019, 2020, they really learned so many lessons so quickly
Oh, yeah.
that they are some of the most resilient people and business owners I know. So I give you so much credit for, even though the first business model, obviously you couldn't have opened at a worse time, but I'm so glad that you persevered and found the model that was perfect for your family. And like I said, I'm so happy to see you doing well.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad to still be a part of what you guys have going on too.
So I'm going to link to the group that you mentioned. And where else can we follow you and your business?
Okay, yes. So I've put the link to our Facebook, the Micro School Maker Society, and we also have an Instagram, same name, and then our website, cultivatestudiosmobile.com. You can kind of see more about our school or about a micro school. You can download our info kit, and then there's a little place on the website also about these. And people can email me also. I'm happy to connect in any way.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time and energy. This was great. I know people are really going to enjoy this, and I wish you the best of luck in your micro school and with your family.
Thank you, Michelle. Good luck to you too so soon. I can't wait to see pictures of that baby girl.
Thank you. All right, that wraps up my conversation with Sydney Loper, owner of Cultivate Academy over in Mobile, Alabama. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And again, if you have any questions whatsoever, don't be afraid to leave them in the comments. And as always, if you have a topic suggestion or if there's a question you'd like me to answer in a video, leave it in the comments or send me a message on Instagram. It's Michelle Caruana. I'd love to hear from you and connect with you over there. All right, I will see you soon. Bye for now.